Welcome everyone to this installment of the Down Under edition of OWASP DevSlop. Today we'll be talking about software bill of materials with our guest Bill Manning. But before we get into it, let's cut to a short promo for our gracious sponsors at Datadog.
Datadog's cloud security platform detects threats in real time across your full stream of ingested data. You can easily get started with default detection rules that map to the MITRE ATT&CK framework and other compliance standards. For more flexibility, you can write custom rules right in the UI, no query language required. The cloud security platform also tracks your compliance posture alongside other security threats. And expert-built dashboards offer immediate visibility into threats and trends. 500+ out-of-box integrations give you security insights in minutes. You can now view and correlate all your data in a unified platform that brings together DevOps and security teams. Sign up for a free trial of Datadog today and receive free swag.
All right. Good morning, everyone. How are we all doing?
Hey, really good.
Yeah, not too bad.
Right on. I'm talking from your past.
Oh my goodness.
I'll never accept that. I'll never get my head around that.
So it's Friday night in the US.
It is.
Okay. All right. Grab a beer. Have a chat.
Yeah.
Why not?
That's right after this. I got one right over there.
I think.
All right. And so today we'll be talking about demystifying software bill of materials and their impact on secure software development. So yeah, Bill, got your slides up, ready to launch in?
Okay, ready to vomit my stuff all over the place? All right, sounds good to me.
That's what we're hoping for.
All right, here we go.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate you guys having me here today. It's exciting to talk to everybody down in Australia. But let's get going. Let's just jump right into it. Right, enough of me just chit-chatting. So today we're going to be talking about software bill of materials and its importance, right? I'm going to break down a lot of information about what it is, why it's there, and some other issues. And at the end of this, I have a very special thing that I'm going to be talking about that everybody can get involved in. It's a new open source project that my company is sponsoring along with a couple others. And so let me introduce who I am, I guess, first of all. Oh, God, I hate that picture. Well, how you doing? I'm Bill. You can call me Bill Manning. It says, the thing, William quote Bill Manning. I'm a solution architect and also the manager for solution engineering for a company called JFrog. If you're not familiar who we are, we're the universal binary repository management people. It's a big long sentence to describe what we do, but we just basically manage the third-party transitive dependencies, which will be a crust of the talk we give today, and also the builds that you manage for a lot of global organizations, but I won't go into it too much. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's William Manning. Yes, I was lucky enough to get that. And also you can follow us on JFrog. So today, first thing I want to talk off is, of course, my marketing team said, hey, anybody who's here, please scan that little image or go to jfrog.co/devslop. We're doing a raffle for some T-shirts, and also, too, we have a book. We literally wrote the book on basically expedited software delivery platforms, so DevSecOps for basically high speed and velocity. Chance to win one of our books. It's also available on Amazon. Yeah, I sound like an ad here. I'm like, it's also going to throw some steak. So we'll throw some steak knives.
Bill, when does it close?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. You're asking things out of my pay grade, man. I don't understand these things. I'm like,
wait, so you're saying, Bill, for 4 installments of $9.99, we can...
Yes, you know what? But also, we also accept COD, so cash on delivery is okay.
Oh.
Nice.
We actually just
And for an additional
Venmo
payment.
Too. Yeah, so you can Venmo me if you want.
Free
I'll make
knives?
sure you get it. Really? Yes.
Exactly. I also really enjoy that,
where knives. It's sliced.
We have yet another example of us training people to scan QR codes. which I think is.
But only on the DevClub show. You can
Yeah,
trust
just here.
that.
It's safe. It's fine.
Nowhere else.
Yes, QR codes are the devil. No, okay. So, but if you'd like to, one of the shirts, I think the shirt we're giving away this time is our little binary, the shirt that's part of this in the beginning. So this is our JFrog shirt. We do a different shirt every year. I'm actually wearing our Black Panther shirt that we did, so Black Panther Frog. Anyway, we like to have fun. We're actually known for our t-shirts, which is hilarious. I'm like, you should know us for our products, but your t-shirts are awesome. And I'm like, okay, fine.
I like the Ramones.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, I was just at the Bowery in New York, so it was really cool. Actually, it sucked days because I went to the CBGB's, which is now a high-end clothing store, at Joey Ramone's place, and Joey's just rolling and rolling and rolling. Anyway, let's continue on here. So let's start off where it all began, right? You can't understand software bill of materials without understanding where it came from. So today we're going to talk about software supply chain attacks. I know it's an exciting, riveting subject, but we'll try to make the fun of it as much as we can. So first of all, what the heck is software supply chain attack, right? We see these headlines all the time. Like if you go to Hacker News, some exploitation in some sort of library that somebody's using in a product. And next thing you know, companies are missing like reputations garnished, their stock prices plummeting. People are like, I had a customer a couple of weeks ago. I was like, if you're not, I'm one of your customers, so I want to make sure that your stuff is safe because you use and have my money. Right. So the thing is that, understanding, what is out there, why is this such a problem and why does software bill of materials suddenly show up on the scene last year? And to understand that, we're going to dive into the secrets behind these headlines. So software supply chain attacks, right? If you don't know what it is, it's the third-party transitive dependencies, the stuff that you use to make your software. If you're a software developer, these are susceptible. And the thing is that when we look here, and you can see over time, this is nothing new. This has been going on for a long time. I mean, this is going back to even the earliest days of, even before the internet with some sneakerware stuff and other things like that. But the whole idea here is that there's been these attacks over time of inserting like malicious code or nefarious components into the supply chain. When you create your software, it gets embedded inside and there's, and suddenly it rears its ugly head and bad things happen. And if we're going to talk about bad things happening, of course, we always know the one thing that really, this is the thing that was a fire under everyone's like collective butts for, in terms of having knowledge around software supply chain and the systemic problems. SolarWinds was not only bad because it was 18,000 customers and, it took, lots of remediation back in, 2020, but also too, it's $100 billion in remediation. But the reason why it got such a view was because of the customers it affected. In the United States, it was the Department of Defense, the Department of Homeland Security, the Federal Reserve Bank, right? I mean, little institutions that do everything from managing your money to blowing up the world. Right. And in Australia, you guys were the same thing. A lot of the government agencies depend on SolarWinds for the things that they do. Well, in this case, the actual attack that took place was actually pretty elegant. I always talk about the fact that whoever did this was pretty freaking genius, right? I mean, the whole thing, the pun, the bill pun. There you go. That's punny. I'm here all week. So the whole thing is that, the reason why it was so elegant was it was actually a fourth level dependency that caused the problem. It was insane. And the thing was, it was actually really cool the way they built it. I'm sorry to say this, but you installed the software 4 levels down. So it was a dependency of a dependency and a dependency of a dependency. It wasn't even implicit. They didn't even state they wanted this. And the thing is, it came in. And the coolest part about it is that it didn't do anything until you started it. And then when you started it, it started a timer. And 14 days later, all the havoc and chaos ensued, right? Open the ports and let us all be susceptible to things. But this really was a catalyst for a lot of government agencies, a lot of government entities, and a lot of the industry. I actually have another talk that's kind of similar to this called "If Code Can Kill." It's actually probably my darkest one. And I'm like, here's a bug that was this. And I showed the bug and I'm like, and here's 187 people who died because of it. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing is that it's a serious problem. I mean, these issues aren't like I'm going to go steal your information. I mean, that's every day. I mean, shit. I mean, yeah, we go through this all the time. But this is like, I've got a pacemaker. Oh, well, hey, how's that software treating you, right? I'm ventilators, dialysis machines, you name it. So when this came about, everybody got together and said, hey, by the way, here's a reminder to everybody that, 85 to 90% of the stuff you use to build your code is someone else's. I have a quote at the end of this. It's hilarious. But the whole thing is that how do you know? And the thing is that when we start talking about this, there's something I want to instill in everybody initially when we talk about this. Is the fact is, I started my career long ago. Yes, there were computers then, they have all this gray and stuff. But the thing is
I think I can see one of them behind you, Bill, actually.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, and trust me, it actually works. And when I started it the first time for my kids, they're like, "This is weird." I'm like,
Nice.
"Yes, it is." But the thing is that coders are artisans, right? We're artists. This is what we do. We're giving a subject. The subject has parts. We break them down. We decide what we're going to use to build this, right? So usually the technology stack is the next part of it. What will accomplish the job better? I'm building an iOS app. All right, great. I'm going to use Swift. Oh, I'm doing a web app. I probably will do something like Flutter if I want to do a cross mobile and maybe web, or I might use just straight NPM with some sort of layer framework. You know what? I'm going to orchestrate this, right? I'm going to go ahead and create some Docker images to host it, and I'm going to use Kubernetes to run it because I want to do scale, right? All these pieces come from somewhere, and we don't know who they are. But at the same time, we want to make sure that the developers and the coders that are out there and they're doing their work, one of the things is you want to keep that creative juices, everything flowing. You want that creativity. That's what coders do, and that's their medium. But the thing is that the things, the paints that we use to, make the palette, the palette we have, we get it because we have a KPI and something we have to adhere to. And we're like, okay, I got to concatenate a string. Well, I found a library that does it. Great. I just pull it in. I don't ever ask where it came from, right? It's like inviting somebody to your house, see on the street, like, hey, buddy, you want to come in? Here's my bathroom. If you want something, there's a fridge. Go ahead. Know nothing about you? Oh, sure, bring your friends because that's what happens.
Yeah, we're just managing finances and launching weapons in here. It's cool.
It's okay. Yeah. It's cool. Come on in. So the thing is that a lot of this information really scared the hell out of all these. Especially I have nuclear launch codes. It's like, these are things that you want, so some kid who's like, I just started hacking, hack the planet because of your thing behind it, right? A little crash override coming in. But the whole thing is that, understanding that is really the base behind this because software is everywhere. And you know what? And the thing is the velocity of creation of software has gotten faster and faster over time, right? Our customers expect to get the features they want, rapidly. Companies want to get those features out there because they want to go against their competitors. But the problem is that, we've automated more and we've done all these things and things start to fall through the cracks on this. And the thing is that, it's not just also in talking about building the software, right, and all this. It's also there's practices, there's a mentality change that happens, and that's a whole nother discussion. We hear all the time. Our organization is going towards more first level software security, so we're going to go with shift left. We're going to put everything at the developer level, which by the way is the place you need it to be. It's where the return on your investment in any security tool is greatest, right? The further you go down your software development life cycle, the more exponential the costs, right? But at the same time, it's also a thing. It's not just talking about here's some tools to do it, but here's some things you need to keep in mind. Like we introduced at my company, we introduced a thing called operational risk. How old are these binaries you're using? Because you're building the latest software, but you might be using software, transitive dependencies that are from 2007. I found one the other day from 2004, and I'm like, oh, this is great, right? And it's never been updated since, right? I'm like, this is amazing.
I'm still thinking about things that depend on Python 2.7, like
right?
Jython, for example, is one of those things where Python 2.7, very sunset now, and also we're still using it for a bunch of things. Particularly, I know that it was an issue after it was sunset, and Burp Suite was still using Jython for all of their Burp extender stuff.
Yeah,
and it's kind of like, all right, so what can we do about that?
Right, and that's a huge
security
problem,
tool. Right? Yeah.
Oh, legacy is the devil, right? I mean, like, the thing is that there's also, and you got to remember too, a lot of companies actually have invested so much money into this that for them to go and change what they need to change is sometimes there's so much short-sightedness in a lot of cases. Like you said, Python 2.7. It's like, I've talked to companies and they're like, well, we can't change it. Why? Well, we created some libraries that we use for us that are like base libraries, and they only work there. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense, because you should be able to do the same thing if you upgrade. And they're like, yeah, but the people we want to talk to that do this, they don't want to talk to us. And I'm like, well, that's weird. I'm like, that sounds like you have a really good, solid organization there.
Sounds like a you problem.
If only there was a solution. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If I could only think of something that would make this easier, it'd be great.
Oh, well.
But and that's the thing, though, is also too, when we think about this, by the way, there are some, financial rewards here. I mean, there are, all these sites out there where you can go. I mean, you can even go to like Reddit, you can go to Hacker News, right, where we get all that information. But I almost feel like sometimes I love Hacker News and I love Reddit, but almost I feel like sometimes some of the discussions there feel like somebody's throwing down a gauntlet. Like, they read an article and they're like, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. And somebody's like, challenge accepted. Like, I'm going to go take this up, right? You know what I mean? And
just full on sport. Yeah.
Right, exactly. They're like, oh, that's new. That looks interesting. I haven't done that before. I think I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to give it a go. Yeah. Right. But the thing is, too, is in some cases there are bounties out there, right? There are a lot of, especially with Bitcoin. Oh my God, it made it so, when any sort of variant of Bitcoin, it made it so much easier to get paid for this stuff. Right now, it's non-traceable, so it just made it even worse. Right? It went up to that next level where people are like, "Holy crap! Wait, I can get a Bitcoin, and by the way, that payment I get also can increase. Hey, you know what? That's even better, right? It's really amazing if you follow the trends. It's almost terrifying in a way. But the thing is that all this is attractive. It used to be all about the bragging rights, and it still is. I mean, you go to DEF CON or any of those, it's still about the bragging rights. If without getting caught. I know a guy who did this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
hypothetically.
I see something about the dog saying his head next to you, and I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah, but while you were talking, like, Logan came up and stood next to me, and I boxed him in the nose with my elbow, and I was like, great, I'm going to hell now. This is it. Honest answers only.
your dog was just attracted to my talk. That's what it is. And its little pink jumper.
Wait, I can get paid for 0 days? What?
Yes,
what?
you can.
What?
Yes, you can. Actually, by the way, there are some out there that are bounties for the good, by the way. Like, there are, this. A lot of companies out there offer, I mean, look at Netflix, right? $10,000 if you can find something.
Sure.
I mean, $25,000 from Google if you could prove or disprove something you've done, right? An exploit. I mean, these are, basically they're paid, they're sanctioned honeypots is what they are.
Yeah.
If you think about it, right?
And I've seen some incredible vulnerabilities built just that people have put together with exactly the stuff that you're talking about that has impacted like large internet companies today, companies like AWS and things like that, where they're doing exactly what you're describing. Like, they're pulling in dependencies. That dependency, a researcher finds a 0 day in it, and then people have obviously mixed opinions about this, but they then approach various bug bounties with that research that they've done on that dependency and highlight the fact that the code base is vulnerable, and then they get paid for it. So there's an immense amount of security value there, I think.
It used to not always be that way, though, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, look at like people like Kevin Mitnick, right? Kevin Mitnick is probably the most infamous, coder of all, hacker coder of all times. Like, I actually have one of his cards, by the way, and his card is the best. It's actually a lockpick set. So it's a metal card, and you can actually take the pieces off, and it has instructions on how to pick a lock. I'm like, that's awesome. But the thing is that this used to not always be the case, right? People would approach companies and get arrested. They would go to the FBI and be like, "This is a cyber attack."
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I don't know if you
nowadays that only happens when people inspect the element of a website.
Yeah, but that's the easy ones. Those are the low hanging fruit, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about the guys who throw on, a sniffer and start sniffing traffic and breaking down, what kind of data is going across the wire and going, hey, shit, I can exploit that. You know what I mean? Like, these are those, I mean, it's gotten terrible. But now This is even worse. What we're going to talk about here is even worse. 74% of the stuff that everybody uses out there can be fixed with one vulnerability, but that 74%, by the way, is either old, outdated, end of life, or contains one major vulnerability, and nobody gives a shit. Like, it seems like that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm just using it, and I'm going to make sure I have this. But the thing is that it's out there. And mostly everything out there is some sort of potential threatening. And like I said, it's not just implicit. It's not just what I state as a developer. It's all the other. I mean, so perfect example, NPM, right? Node. The thing is, I call it the house party. Yeah. Everybody makes fun of me when I call it the house party, right? So I put it together. I'm doing my coding. I do a package.json. I put in 3 dependencies for what I'm going to build. And the next day I know 500 people show up and trash my place.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And that's what happens, right? But those 500, those 479 other things that came along, I know nothing about them. I just go, oh, you know what? That's cool.
You're friends of this guy. I trust this guy, so come on in.
Well, it's very much like that XKCD dependency comic where like you pull down the top package and then there's that one little one. Like, aside from security, I think we all have memories of what happened with LeftPad. And now if you
my God,
put that,
I was just going to say LeftPad, right? 11 lines of code that wreaked havoc on the web, right? From 2016. That was like, and like, I was one of those companies.
If that's what padding can do, imagine what a like security problem can do. Like, and I think that's a really simple way to look at it. Is every engineer to some degree was impacted by LeftPad, and it's like, okay, now just imagine that's a critical vulnerability that gives someone RCE somewhere in your ecosystem, and it suddenly like puts into perspective just how finicky the like dependency systems that we rely on are.
Yeah,
exactly. To understand the log4j stuff in particular was really tricky because it was, sorry, Mimi, it was just one of those really low-level things where this is your dependency, but it is in there. And it is, as Beck was saying, RCE. It's one of those, I think that brought it home. And it made it a lot easier when we had Spring for Shell a bit later, actually, to help people understand, hey, remember that? It's like this, but here it is, patch it again. We actually had a lot of an easier time, at least at my workplace and the people we work with, patching that because people had been through that in December. So when it came up again in April,
we released a free tool to everybody in the world. We said my security team, we put together a script that you could run, and it was actually meant to diagnose this for companies to make it easier because we got impacted by where we have some of our products written in Java and stuff like that. I always talk about that, or like fast XML, right? It's the #1 XML parser for Spring Boot, and that's actually one of the most susceptible ones out there. And it's been addressed over time, but like there was one where it was leaking the XML data. You could just latch onto it, and next thing you know, you're pulling any sort of record that's being parsed by that. It was easy to grab, and the thing was, once again, it was a 4th level transitive dependency of Spring Boot, right? It was just a function that you could call in the framework, right? And nobody's like, oh, it's part of it. Everybody uses it. Why not, right? But like the stats I have here are the exact reason why it's a problem, right? The thing is that this has been going on and it's getting worse. And COVID, I'm going to tell you right now, the lockdown made it terrible. People got bored. They're like, what do I do? I know, I got an idea, right? And the thing is, like, we've actually watched it go 4x year over year over year. I mean, we're actually, so my company, we're CNAs, right? So we have a whole research team. We produce CVEs. We do deep dives into this. We release massive articles on this to protect everybody. That's one of the things, like, my goal is to educate people, right? I mean, the thing I'm doing right now is not my day job. This is just something I do because people ask me to do, and I love talking about it. But the thing is, what's that?
Because we forced you to do it, right?
It did. You guys can't see the guns behind here because this is America and we have lots of them. So we make sure that we keep somebody at all times. But the thing is that when we talk about this stuff, why is this happening? And what's some of the basics behind it? And some of the basics is it's #1, it's super low effort. You don't even have to be a super skilled programmer. Let's face it. right? It doesn't take a lot of technical skill. Somebody can go in, take a Coursera course on how to code something, go into some other place, look at some examples, right? Some terrible examples like in like, I don't know, whatever, and then they can come in and start hacking around. But the thing is, though, it's super easy to spread the attack too. Remember, the thing is that, all of these repositories that you pull those third-party transitive dependencies from, right? All those things, they're just out there and they're open source. And I'm a huge open source guy, EFF, everything all the way, big, the thing is like, I make my yearly watch of, Internet's Own Boy about Andrew Schwartz and, and all these things, right? I'm that kind of guy. I read books by Cory Doctorow, that's just what I am. And the thing is that, the thing is we want to encourage this, but at the same time, because of the way we've built that infrastructure behind it, we've actually really, really left it susceptible. And the biggest thing is it also abuses trust relationships, right? We see this all the time in my company because of the fact that we talk to customers and they're like, well, how are you handling your transitive dependencies now? And some have had the real knee-jerk reaction. They're like, well, we have to put together the dependencies we need. We go talk to the security team. We submit a form. They pull them down. They scan them for us, and then they give them to us. I'm like, how long does that freaking take? I'm like, that sounds like a nightmare. It sounds like, hold on, I'm just going to do this while I wait to do my job, right?
Yeah, we talk about agile. It's like, hello.
Right. And this happens all the time. So like on our side, we have ways to expedite that. I'm not going to go, this is not a pitch. I'm just saying we have ways to help expedite that because we want development to happen. But the thing is too, is that what this does is they blend into the community. And that's the hardest part, because the thing is you don't also want to witch hunt suddenly inside of, the things that you do, inside of the community, like who did that, right? Because most of the time, most people are anonymous behind their handles, right? I mean, that's part of the thing.
What's been interesting to me has been some people who are sabotaging their own packages for their own reasons. We've seen at least 2 high-profile cases of that recently, where people have injected malware into their own stuff. In one case, because they were protesting against the war against Ukraine. And the other one was, I think, somebody who, I think he had some other issues going on in his life. But yeah, that's also something.
When it gets personal, that's even worse.
We're just going to glaze over the personal issues there.
that we don't want to know about. We're like, you know what? There's some people you should talk to.
I think,
but also
it's
injecting
also,
stuff into your own packages. It's just one of those threat models where, when how do we prevent that from being a thing? We can't really. So what do we do about that?
And I think we're going to touch on this in future slides, I think. But I just want to also bring up the idea about package hijacking, right? Like situations where
that's actually
okay.
one of the things.
I'll can it, and I'll let you touch on that later.
Let's bring it back to what Beck was saying.
Yeah.
Let's bring it back to what Beck was saying.
I think Bill raised a really interesting point about witch hunting, because I remember when Heartbleed was a thing, the engineer who was on the Git blame for that faced a lot of scrutiny, and people were starting to question whether they purposely introduced that vulnerability. And it really started the conversation of, security people are humans as well, and we all make mistakes, and this has been here for 14 years. It's not one engineer's mistake. It is every person who has looked over it. It's the fact we didn't have safeguards in place. And it really did sort of kick off that trend, I guess, of witch hunting when bugs were found. And I think it makes people more concerned about introducing libraries that have transitive dependencies that are vulnerable, because it's like, am I going to be blamed for this?
We could dig into why Git blame itself is a pretty toxic kind of thing to have as a function, and the word blame itself being a problem.
And here's the thing is, we don't have the real ability to, even in these cases, for a lot of this. And actually, it's funny, is at the end of this is actually part of the discussion, is how do we fix this, right? So we're announcing a new open source project that we're doing, that we're hopefully going to try to alleviate this, because of the fact is that, like, I don't know if you know the story of like Japanese trains, and how they had a high rate of people getting killed based on getting on the platform, versus they introduced some procedures, and the procedures they introduced were to help alleviate that. So if you ever go to Tokyo and you look at a Japanese train, before a train goes, there's always a guy on the platform who does this, and he looks down the line, and he does it twice. And then he also goes through and he looks at the next person. And they have people on the line that raise their hand, and even it's a visual check system, right? But most of these times we don't have that ability to throw in procedures to say every time we check in something and do something, we need to go through all this, because then people will complain. It'll backlog. These are open source. These are people's personal times. Putting into this, right? But at the same time, and then of course, then we go the other way where people are like, this is open source, it should be free, I should be able to do whatever I want, right? Free as in speech, not as in beer, all the arguments, right? And that's one of the hardest things. I've had some talk with some of the community aspects, and actually that's some of the hardest community things is like, well, then who judges? Who's the judge on this? And I'm like, here we, and then you get down that rabbit hole, and then people just give up, and then you're back to square one again. Right? It just happens. And like I said, and here's like when attacks occur, right? I'm doing my project, I'm doing my thing. I need a bunch of libraries to do what I do. And, I build like an executable or whatever I'm building. I don't care what I'm building, right? And I finally have something nefarious inside, and it happens. And next thing you know, I'm giving it to my customer as a gift, and then possibly losing them as a customer, right? Then the nasty phone calls start happening, and we want a discount, whatever, or we want you out. But usually this isn't the case, like I said before, right? This is more the lines of I'm pulling in something I don't know about, something I wasn't implicit, right? This is something that is an indirect transitive dependency, right? It's the dependency of the dependency. Like you said, I invite a friend, I trust a friend, and that friend brings a friend, and next thing I know, And that's the thing is that these are the things that we're trying to, alleviate as a company, because this is the one. In 2021, there was a 650% increase in supply chain attacks. Think about that. And don't get me wrong, it's not like we haven't been tracking the trends. This has been tracked forever. But even us as an organization, we track this stuff actively. And we just started watching this happen. It's maybe it was because there was more awareness and people actually started paying attention. There's a lot of factors into the 650%. Don't get me wrong. I think, like I said, it was 2021 and 2020. Suddenly companies started to give a shit, right? They actually started to be like, oh, wait, this is a real thing. And that's the thing too, is one of the things a lot of companies have to fight is this a thing? And they're like, well, I haven't seen it happen to us, or it's happened. They don't even realize it. I'll do my best, Neil. But it's insane, right? And like I said, SolarWinds, $100 billion global remediation, but it was the catalyst that everybody needed for this, right? So let's talk about what software attacks, right? That's what the whole idea here is. And here we go. Now this is what you were talking about before, right? These are the different types of attack, right? One of the typical ones, and one of the funniest ones I love is typo squatting. There are people who create malicious packages out there with, instead of I before E, they do E before I. And they go in the head and they throw out variants of this. Think about it, right? If you're doing a build of one of these packages, all you have to do is write a script. And the script, all it has to do is go scrape some packages, start coming up with funky, crazy fat-fingered versions of it, post them out there. Somebody's going to fat finger this thing, and next thing you know, it's going to fall right in. And you know what? And most of the time, by the way, most of these things the schnozberries taste like schnozberries kind of idea. The thing is they look, act, and feel just like the real deal, right? They're not like the knockoff version, but inside, there's stuff that's waiting, I'm going to do something. I'm ready, ready to pounce for the right thing to happen.
Yeah.
Well, this is also how we ended up with 5 different ad blockers, right? We had one that was good, and then that got taken over. So someone made one with a plus in the name, and then suddenly everyone's like, which one's the good one? Is it the one without the plus or the one with the plus? And then you have that done on purpose, and it just makes the problem so much harder for people to navigate. And we still ask engineers, well, how didn't you know? And it's I'm sure that if we put the security person in front of 5 different packages that would name the same thing, they would make the same mistake. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. No,
yeah.
That's
especially when
totally correct. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, sorry. It's especially when the code, as you were saying, looks exactly the same, has the same kind of functionality, has 1 or 2 lines in it. It's just let's encode this, let's send it off. I'm thinking.
I don't know about you, but I don't
particularly about
shit.
MageCart and stuff. MageCart and stuff being something that is there to make sure that the transactions, get processed. It's a credit card skimming piece of software.
Yeah.
These transactions still get processed. They really happen. But also there's this bit in there that where they package stuff up and they send it off so that the credit card details are also being sent off to the attacker's servers and then being sold and whatever. But it still performs its actual function. And as long as it performs its actual function, if you've done that good old thing of like building your tests into your pipeline and all of that, the test's probably still passing.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not reading stuff. I'm taking code, I'm fucking building it, and then I'm pressing play, and if it works, it works. Like, I'm not going through line by line. I mean, I'm also not a developer, but I assume you take that and you extrapolate. And no one has the time to go through line by line and be like, what is this library doing?
Oh, look,
so it
Stack
makes
Overflow
sense.
again. Oh, that must be right.
That's
Let's use
literally
that for-
my entire like scripting.
You're like, grab a chunk of code, and you're like, wait a minute, I'll take 6 hours to go ahead and try to refactor this to work for the way I'm using it.
Yeah.
Right?
Why would I build it from scratch when I can just steal it from someone else and it doesn't even work? I don't understand.
There's always a factor there as well where you're talking about the size of an engineering team as well. Because like there might be large engineering teams that actually do have the time to scrutinize every change, but those are in the minority, frankly.
Oh,
like
absolutely. I mean, we have a huge lion's share of the industry, and I'll tell you right now, that is pretty much the case.
right.
Basically, most engineering organizations are, and it comes from the top down. We need to get our stuff out there. It gets pushed down to the product management level. Product management says we need these features because we need to attribute, and sales is like, I need those features, and marketing is like, I'm going to market the shit out of those features, and nobody's going to pay attention. And I'm going to go ahead and give it to my developers, and I talk to the engineering team. We do it tomorrow. Right. And then they throw it together to get the feature out there. You know what? I met my objective. I'm good. I'm going to grab a brew, a beer and chill and whatever.
The thing is, it's not just, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead. No, I'm done.
The thing is that it's not just software developers either. I feel like I'm going to be banging this drum forever, but we've got an entire ecosystem of people who are going to be injecting code, particularly into web apps, after the developers are done, and that's marketers. Yep. Google Tag Manager, the whole thing. That's how a bunch of it works. It's just like side injecting code entirely outside of the development pipeline in the majority of cases by people who are generally not software developers either. And that's just a whole other class of problem for web apps in particular, which we don't even talk about when we're thinking about these things.
Well, I think about it, right? Exactly what you said there. A lot of these trackers, by the way, they do like RPC calls, they do all these things out to whatever services that they're collecting all this data from. And the thing is like, if you think about it, I always joke around with somebody. Like I was like, I draw a picture of a box and I'm like, this is your browser. And this is a page you've gone to. And I'm like, show me where the data comes from. And they show me the line coming in. And I was like, great. I'm like, show me all the data going out. And I was like, I just started drawing lines all over the place. I'm like, this is everything. I'm like, every time you go in there, it's like stepping on a spider web. You're like, ding, I'm going to learn, there's a lot going on, like you said. And a lot of the times they're injected. I mean, for fun, sometimes I like looking, I'll do like the view source on the web page just to see like what data did they forget? Like, what did they put in there? I found one a couple of weeks ago where I emailed the company. I was like, hey, this is awesome. But if you're going to embed stuff like that, you might not want to include your API key.
Yeah.
Wild.
And
I love like little testing text as well, like text that people are forgetting to take out. They're like,
remove this before shipping. Yeah,
that kind of stuff. Oh, it's good.
I love the code also with the Jira ticket numbers in it. Perfect.
Yes, that's another good one too. Or we saw one the one time. My buddy pinged me and he goes, "Go to this site." And he said, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay, view source." I said, "Okay, great." And there was this one. You click on it. It was an image link, and we brought the image link up, and it was like a picture of one of the developers like passed out on a couch with all stuff written on his face, and all the other guys looking at him, and they had left it in there as a joke, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen!" I was like,
"Whoops!"
I think one of the interesting things a part of this as well is that when we talk about things like plugins and add-ons and things like that, we often, as security companies or as security people, go, well, that's their problem. And we forget that, like, whatever, like, if you've developed a browser and you've enabled the ability to add extra things on, like, sure, the security of that one package might be the developer's problem, but that also has the impact to flow out to every other user of your browser or of your product. And you have some responsibility to ensure that there's at least some security in that.
Yes.
And we even just often overlook that as a problem and all of the dependencies that come with other people's plugins and their transitive issues. And the problem has just grown exponentially over time as we make things more interactive and personalized.
Yep. Personalization, by the way, is actually a really funny thing if you think about it, right? You're actually you're giving permission to basically create a profile of you, and sometimes a profile that knows you better than you. So segue. I had before I joined the company I'm in right now, I had a company. I won't mention the name. I was the founder, and we raised money, and once we got past our initial funding, nobody would fund us because everybody said it was too creepy. So I wrote an AI engine that basically was this is about 7-8 years ago. It was a way for companies like Viber, WhatsApp, WeChat, and all those to start actually fighting against Snapchat, right? Because Snapchat was stealing their stuff. So I wrote an engine, and I was working with a lot of Hollywood studios and stuff and getting content. And the engine was like, I could take 1,400 words from your chat messages. And by the way, they gave us access to these kind of messages. And build a profile, and then and then what we did is we would take all the content we had and we'd pull together like a personalized stream of information that you could go through. And so the thing is that in some cases it'd be things that you might have said, like, I like the man with one red shoe, and it was like, so there's a red shoe. Like we would build these ad models and interactive models. But the thing was, you gave implicit ability for you to say, hey, take all my information and show me stuff. And when you do this, everybody does this every single day. And
they do.
Right? So, really quick, moving forward, just really fast. This is the fun one, though. This is the one I like the most. And this is the one that you were actually hinting at, right? So, dependency confusion. I love dependency confusion because these are trusted names, right? I mean, even Microsoft, who I used to be the biggest hater of long ago, is now the biggest contributor to the open source community. Blows my mind. Sadia is just the man.
I'm still not comfortable with that fact, and I don't think I ever will be.
Yeah, I know. I have mixed feelings. Like when they released SQL Server for Linux, I was like, what? Wait, what's good?
And they open source .NET and all that sort of stuff, and they're like a non-trivial contributor to the Linux kernel now too.
Yeah.
And like 13-year-old me is just like, nah, this is not happening. I built my whole identity on this at one point.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, no, seriously. I was the same way too. It was like, I was a Linux contributor long ago, and also I use Macs and stuff because I was like, it uses the same core kernel, so it's fine. I feel comfortable, right? And all these things, and then all of a sudden they started, Saudi took over. It was like, oh my god, this is what's going on? Who are these?
Richard
people?
Stallman intensifies.
Yeah, there you go. But the whole thing is that like all these companies are put stuff out there. I mean, look at Netflix. I mean, one of my favorite projects of all time that they ever released, and it's still my favorite piece of software ever written, is still Chaos Monkey. I love Chaos Monkey.
Pretty great.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, it's awesome, right? I mean, you think about it, it's just its whole business in life is to destroy, right? I mean, that's what this thing does, right? They're like, here, guys.
Also, at the time, like, people's thinking around infrastructure was totally shaken by Chaos Monkey. There was a lot of like, hang on, that's not a realistic model. Like there's no way nobody's that would happen.
Nobody's gonna unplug that cable, nobody's gonna start just shutting down threads. Like,
Monkey will.
Right? Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like it's like that. And then the thing is though, is that the example I always use is this one, right? This is one of the most notorious ones. You look at this, it says PayPal. They're like PayPal. They're a bank. They're a bank. Oh, they must know security. Oh, they have authentication. Oh, well, you know what? This is probably top notch, and I'm going to use it. This is bullshit. These don't exist. These ones are fake. These are terrible. Actually, if you extract them and you look at them, they're absolutely horrific. Like they just are like, hey, by the way, not only am I going to take your data, but I'm also going to sabotage everything else inside, and you're never going to be able to dig your way out on this. right? And that's the thing is like there's all these types of attacks going on, and and this kind of led up to the idea of like like what is software bill of materials, right? What does it mean? Why is suddenly everybody talking about this, right? And how does it correlate back to what we were just discussing? Well, if you want to understand it, you got to start back in like 2018. Actually, in the United States, remember I talked about if code could kill. The whole idea here is that basically the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration of America, was like, hey, you know what? We have devices that actually keep people alive, and also too, National Telecommunication Information Administration, and big technical title. But the idea here was originally around medical devices. And then it became avionics, right? Then it became other things. But medical devices was the big thing. You need to know the software that's inside, also from a liability perspective and a lot of other factors, right? But it was like you have software that runs in these devices that, like I said, like pacemakers and ventilators and artificial hearts and just all your basic stuff. I mean, and the thing was, they were like, we need accountability. And the thing is that this level of transparency that was needed in the industry was really actually something super serious. Well, SolarWinds came about, and in the United States government, we decided to actually put out an executive order, actually May of last year. Yes, and I did have to read it. It took me 4 days because I kept freaking falling asleep during it because it is so much garbage. But I was
suggesting it was like a little bit of a dry read.
Oh my God. I was like, oh, I could skim this. You know what I mean? It's like, and I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, I don't want to get. I was terrible.
Did they provide easy read versions of these? I know sometimes with bills they'll provide like a simple version.
I want an audiobook version of this, but read by somebody super exciting. Like I don't want it to be like the lawmaker. I don't want to be like a guy like.
No, get LeVar Burton to do it.
Yes.
This is an industry. This is an industry, everybody. Coining this term, you heard it here first. Audio books for exciting things of law bills.
Yeah, but
Could we get Jeff Goldblum?
Yes. Come on. Everybody loves Jeff. Come on.
We do.
Like,
we love Jeff.
And we're touching and feeling, and we're
Yeah.
But that might take a while, and you might be. I'd actually like Neil Gaiman to read it. I don't know. I'm listening to a Neil Gaiman audiobook right now with him reading his own stuff on the Sandman, and it's brilliant. Right? He's got.
I can't not read this in Jeff Goldblum's voice now.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, it's really. Oh my God, yes, and they were screaming and running, and it's like
dramatic reading.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Oh, think about how awesome it would be to like either that or I'd like to have like a comedian read it. Like I'd like to have like like Mike Biglio or one of those guys.
Just order a cameo.
I want Jim Jeffries to read this to me.
Yeah, order a cameo, give them a paragraph, and pay them money to do it. Get your feel that way.
Jim Jeffries was my first show I went back to live.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Because you can doesn't mean you should. And you get him to do the Jurassic Park line in the middle of it.
All right.
Yeah.
Good
but I had to go through this, and the big thing is this one section, right? Enhancing software supply chain security. They actually implicitly stated it here, which is awesome, right? And they actually said provided purchasers with a software bill of materials for each direct or either directly or publishing it or putting it somewhere. But the thing is that initially it was just for the government. Once again, protecting their asses around, what happened with SolarWinds. Well, now the rest of the industry is kind of latched onto it. Like, actually, you know what? This is kind of a good idea. And then, of course, insurance companies that insure businesses are like, yeah, that's a good idea. We want to charge you more for it, right? But anyway, the whole thing is that when you look, every time I say cyber, I have to take a drink. Oh, okay, damn it. I need to get shots. All right, hold on. I'll bust out the other thing. I know that you guys saw what I saw last time. I'll bust out
the very not vegan.
I feel like we're being
vegan.
I mean, this is definitely it's definitely not vegan. I'll tell you that. It definitely was alive at some point. But at the same time, it's like the whole idea here is that this became a thing. So since it's the FDA and the Food and Drug Administration, I was like, what's the equivalence of this, right? To kind of delineate it down for people. And of course I went with ingredients, right? May contain milk or nuts, these are things that are out there, right? These are all the stuff that makes up the pieces that you're doing. And the thing is so when you're looking at something like a cake, and this is my cake talk, so I like to say, here's all the ingredients of a cake. Here's the thing. I just showed you the ingredients, and I don't know if you've ever seen the Great British Bake Off, but like they have the technical challenge where they always go through and they're like, here's a list of ingredients, do it, right? Create that picture, what I'm showing there. Well, the software bill of materials is an abstraction. It's just what's inside. It's not telling you how to do it, right? It's just letting people know that you're using this. So the software bill of materials is just a list of ingredients, right? The libraries, modules, proprietary and free, right? All the things that you use to build the software that you're doing. You can include additional information like tooling and whatnot. But the thing is, it's just a way for your people to understand, what is there. And it says, let's start making it and how to break down. But the thing is that the whole thing is that it's just, oh wait, you see the rest of my talk. The thing is that what we have here is it's just a way of giving knowledge. And like I said, this is now, like, I see it in the auto industry. I see it in the aeronautics and avionics industries. I see it, once again, back to medical and all this, but it's becoming more prominent. And the thing is that it's used for a lot of different reasons, right? It's used for a maintenance perspective, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, right? So a way for people, even internally in your own organizations, to find out, change agents that might have happened. But it's also, some of them, like I said, it's really funny is some of them actually use it for things like discounts. You'll actually hear companies saying, well, we don't really approve of that library. And this is a way for some companies to say, hey, we like your software, but of course we like that log for shell thing. And it looks like you guys are using it. We're not comfortable with your software. So there is a part of this, though, that could be very hard for companies, because then they go in, they said, we don't want you, because most of the time it's a black box. We don't want you to know. We just want you to install and use our product. Now it's like, well, you're using this. This is not part of our approved list. So this could cause some problems. There could be some friction caused by this, but also, too, this sometimes is a catalyst, though, for some companies to go, you know what, actually, we should probably fix that because this seems to be an issue. But at the same time, also, it's a way to also manage assets, right? I mean, think about it. Everybody always talks about, we have desks and we have buildings and we have phones and, assets that make up a company. Software is your asset if you're a software company, right? These are part of your capital. They're not just, they're not just digital entities. They're actually capital. They're money. And the thing is that this is also a way for companies to go in and look at the capital that they're using for this and even make adjustments and change, even for things like paid versions of stuff. But the thing is that the big benefit of it is also helps identify, components if there is a problem, so you can notify your customers. They can say what version they're on. They can see if it's part of it. It's a way for also managing licenses. So how many people here have ever been through a merger and acquisition, or have ever had their legal department come to them and say, hey, we need a list of libraries. We're going for financing and we need to do this, or we're going in and we need to see, they want to know what open source licenses that we're using for the software we're building. They want to make sure that we're infringing on stuff. I had to go through this just I had a company that was acquired by a large company that starts with the letter G, and part of that is that when we were going through the negotiating process, we had to build out a massive software list of all the components we needed for our software. We handed it over, and it got redlined. I mean, it took us we got it back and they're like, we can't go forward with this deal unless you go ahead. We can't go forward with this deal if you don't address this. So my engineering team and I had to sit down and we had to go, shit, how are we going to fix this? And we literally had to actually we actually literally had to go in and make those changes. But the thing, too, is also, like I said, you can look at software package risk. You can also identify compliance issues. There's a lot of things you can do with this. But all it means is that software is a whole lot of stuff. And, we've talked enough about software. So let's talk about cake, because I like talking about cake instead, because it is dinner time for me. And I might actually happen to have, cake for dinner tonight, if that's the case. So let's go back, right? Let's look at this cake, guys, right? We know everything. We know a lot about it. It's cake. It looks pretty delicious, right? It's got some really funky frosting on it. We know that somebody made it somewhere, right? It could have been a machine or a person. Could have been automated. Who knows? We know it was the ingredients to make this cake were mixed. We know it was baked, unless it's a cold cake, which sounds weird, but we know it was baked at some point, right? All those ingredients were munched together and created something. We know that somebody probably decorated it, or maybe it was something that did it for it. It could be tasty. It looks pretty tasty, and I'm starving. So actually, it does look really tasty. But we know it was made up of ingredients, right? And so when we go back and look at this again, the thing is that the ingredients are one thing. But with the software bill of materials, like I said, you can add additional information. You could add instructions, right? You could say, like, we preheated this, oven, and we put it in for X number of minutes, and we did blah, 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 right? There's a lot of things here. But the big difference, too, with software bill of materials that really exposes is, let's look at one of the ingredients. Let's talk about baking soda, right? Everybody knows baking soda. I actually am one of those idiots, and this is actually almost a real-world experience, is what if one of the ingredients changed between this cake and in the same process, same procedure every time, and then suddenly one of the libraries changes. In this case, one of the ingredients. What if somebody accidentally did baking powder?
Classic.
Yes, I have done. Yes, and that's the reason why the results are this, right? There is a definitive difference between baking soda and baking powder.
Rookie era.
Yeah, totally rookie era. I mean, I'm like, why does it look so flat?
One cake is more like aerodynamic, I guess you could spin it that way.
It's high speed, low drag when it goes into the oven and it comes out, and when you slip it into your mouth, you're like, oh, that went down easier.
It's all about context.
Right, exactly. But the thing is that, these are things that are like software, right? Things change between versions, and how do you keep up with it? How do you know? How do your customers know, that something happened? So what it comes down to is, like all the pieces that are inside. And there we go. Here's my little, Kung Fury. But, the whole Hack-A-Man. But the whole idea is, what's inside that counts. And so when we start talking about this again, we'll go back to the example. In this case now, when I build these components, now I can plug all that data into a digital format. So just to let you know, there's two formats, CycloneDX and SPDX, right? So it depends. I mean, like the U.S. government is like, we like SPDX. Of course, Europe is like, yeah, that's great. We like CycloneDX, right? I mean, and nobody's really come across with a complete full digital standard yet, right? Once again, we're in that ambiguous state of like, is this something or isn't this, who's going to do what and who's not? It says, coders are artists, question, best practices don't inspire trust. There we go. But the whole thing is that when we do this, having that information is interesting, right? Because what happens if, I'm not changing screens. There we go. So we can now supply this information, like what went into it. We can do that. But once again, let's go when something changed. Once again, say one of the libraries changed. We can update the software bill of materials and inform our customers, by the way, just to let you know, we switched version, we remediated what you did, you complained about, or hey, we upgraded it to be more performant, and they can go, oh yeah, look, it looks like they didn't make some substantial changes. And even if something is terrible, right? Something is absolutely cringeworthy, horribly terrible, we at least know that we can go in and have that information and tell our customers, hey, by the way, just so you know, we're releasing a new version and you're kind of susceptible. Not a very awkward conversation to have. But also, too, is that this gives you as an organization the ability to go ahead and target and say, hey, you know what? It looks like we've been using that actual component in these versions. It looks like 1.4 might be the safe one. But it's not just individual pieces of software. That's something you got to keep in mind, too. I mean, this even comes down to even cakes with lots of layers. I like lots of layer cakes. Oh, shoot, we're going to go over, aren't we? I'm running out of time. You have an hour, right?
Oh, we can go over a little.
Nobody's going to keep us out.
Okay. Yeah. All right, so I'll make this sort of fast.
If we want to.
All right, cool. I'm going to go get my rum. So the thing is that if we look here, right, what about lots of lots of components? When we start talking about lots of things, right? And like each layer of this cake, could be totally different. Each one could have its own set of ingredients, right? Together it might taste awesome, right? It might taste terrible. Who knows? The thing is that each of these can be different in how you do things, but each layer itself can be its own component, right? This is complex software. So this is when I talk about website versus layer cakes, right? So in other words, like the helm could be the frosting, each one of the layers could be its own Docker image, when you're doing it, right? This is the idea. But the thing is that when you start breaking these apart, you need to think about even the Docker image layers, right? You have the app, you have the runtime, you have the OS, and you need to be able to contribute for all of that, right? Every single component inside of that. So it's not just like, hey, we built an app, we're going to supply you with a Docker image, you can run the Docker image with our product. Well, now you have to be like, okay, well, we're running, in Ubuntu, 1604 LTS. Well, why are you doing that? You should be going up, right? They might question that. We don't support that one internally or whatever. The runtime, what version of something are you doing? Did you embed some, monitoring tools where you want to monitor to see how your customers are using your products, right? No company does that ever. But I'm just saying, like, these are all the things that are inside. And so even when we get down to even Helm charts, right, and we start looking at web services when you're running in Kubernetes, even the Helm chart should have its own set of information, right? I mean, the thing is that people look at the chart as a chart, right? It's a set of instructions. You supply some values, you do some things. Yeah, you're still doing something. You're still doing specific versioning. You're still, you're saying X number of pods. You want to, I want to scale on this, but I can't scale on this. I'm using a Postgres instance because we use Postgres for our product, and when you install it, this is what we use, right? These are all things you got to keep in mind, and companies will actually request this, because then when they're looking at a web service, they're going to go in and say, hey, by the way, we actually reviewed this and found out that one of the services we're running in this actually contains something nefarious. You got to help us out, right? Or something malicious. The first 20 people, oh, there we go. So thank you for putting it in there. And then at the same time, it's like, what other information can you put in, right? You can put in your CI/CD tooling if you wanted to. Hey, there we go. Oh, Ari's here. Ari, I can't believe you're here, dude. That's great. Ari works for me. He's just lurking in the shadows. He's like
your biggest fan.
Yeah.
So, Bill,
actually, he's got the most exorbitant Star Wars collection. Awesome stuff. Yes, go on.
Really?
So, we've been talking a lot about the software bill of materials as something where we are listing off all of the things that make the components up, make up the components of the things we're building. What about companies that use their own bespoke internal libraries and stuff like that? How do they fit in a software bill of materials?
Absolutely. So you should actually include them in there, right? Because all they include inside of a software bill of materials most of the time is, first of all, the library, the version, the licensing, right, and its origin. Now, the origin can be also expanded upon. So it could be the origin plus, say, a link to the corporation, their, EULA, terms and conditions, or whatever, right? There's a lot of other additional information in, but in the bare bones portion of this, most of the time it would just be your libraries, right? Because the thing is that the data, it depends on what tool you use to do the data. Like my company, we actually collect all that information. So for us to create one, we actually collect all the transitive dependencies, by the way, both proprietary and also open source. And so when we treat it as an entity, right, as a build object, when you build this piece of software, you can extract that, including proprietary volumes. But when you expose this to the customer, you can choose in a way what level of detail you want to expose. There's the bare minimum, but you can expose more if you wanted to. So,
cool.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the thing, is you can include all this additional information for your customers. But also, it's not a roadmap. So let's talk about that. It is not a roadmap for your products. It does not require any source code, right? So these are misconceptions we hear all the time, like we're opposed to it. Nope, don't need that. And also, too, by the way, it's not exposing any intellectual property. Like, again, it's like the Great British Bake Off, right? I give you a list of ingredients. I give you a picture. I really doubt I'd be the person that would be able to recreate that. Mine would come out with some sort of like malformed entity that nobody would want to touch. And they'd be like, why don't we go to the store and buy something instead? And that's what we do. But the thing is, at the end of the day, just think about this. If you want to work with the governments, most governments are going to require a software bill of materials. So if you decide you're going to sell your stuff to the evil empires, go ahead. I'm sorry. But at the same time, you're going to do that, right? Also, too, there you go. Malformed entities. There we go. But the thing is that, you can use it internally for things like how are things made, for auditability, traceability, right? It can help out in legal aspects. These are things that, security and compliance, these are all things that software bill of materials is really something you should do. Because this last slide that I have here before I talk about in the open source project portion, I just want people to go to it. We want to get everybody involved. I think it's awesome. But this one right here, every time you pip install, go get Maven fetch or something is the equivalent of plugging in a thumb drive you found on the sidewalk into your production servers. That is
Well, that's a terrifying thought to leave it on. Jeez, Lord.
And good
I
night.
like it.
You know, it's like sleep
Bill
well,
out.
everybody. You know, it's like, but so I mentioned before
It's not wrong.
that. Yeah, it's not wrong. But then we mentioned before, the fact is that we actually had a big internalized discussion with some customers and as people in our company here, and we decided to do something proactively about it. So I'm actually excited. If you guys want to get involved, it's called Persia. So Persia is our new idea that we're putting out there as a company. We actually have a bunch of other companies who are getting involved in this. We're actually we open source this. So it's not affiliated to JFrog per se. We are the initial origin of it, but we did decide that this is larger than us. Okay, this is way bigger than us. And the idea here is creating a decentralized package management system. So yes, blockchain has its own set of systemic issues, but it does have some valuable asset components behind it, right? Such as the ledgering, verification of signatures, right? The idea of being able to create a massive network of peer-to-peers that also provide things like validation. So in other words, not just having a central source that you pull from, but having a more decentralized one of trusted registries that also too means that those registries can also validate and verify those third-party transitive dependencies. Make sure those signatures are correct. Make sure there's nothing malicious inside. Make sure that when you pull something, you know where it's coming from. And the thing is that the idea here is build and verify. Just keep building and verify. You build something like you normally would do. You send it out to the world, right? You check it into the registry. Other people can go verify and validate whether or not these things are true entities. Do they contain anything malicious, right? The whole idea here is that, is this going to be arduous? Is it going to be successful? I don't know. We're trying. But we figured nobody else is really stepping up to the plate on this. So we decided to be like, you know what? Let's build something, put it out to the world, get everybody involved, because this, like I said, is bigger than us. This is everybody. This affects everybody out there. Even our daily lives, even our lives, right? We talked about SolarWinds, right? You know, you're talking about companies that have nuclear arsenals. And the thing is that they rely on software. But the thing is that we're looking for help and contributions to this effort. And so, you know, if you want, you know, I'm just going through these really quick, but it's a way to build trust models. It's a way to make it easier. We're calling it before shift left. So, you know, whether or not this really goes ahead and becomes something, at least we're putting something out there. And the idea here is that this is a way that we hope can start building a safer model of third-party systems. And like I said, it's just started recently. We just really made the announcement. It's still got that new feature smell. So it's like, you know, it's just, you know, it's new software. But just go to Persia.io. I think, yeah, Ollie put that in there. We're always looking for people to contribute and give their input because we think it's super valuable, right? And this is everybody's problem. You know, it's not my problem. It's your problem. No, just kidding. And it's not me, it's you. But the thing is that, you know, if you have any, you know, if you want to, please go ahead. I encourage it. Here's one last little scanny bit in our little URL. I know that Ari already did that. And I leave you with I and Charlie Day to say goodbye, adieu, auf Wiedersehen, whatever you say. Guys, I really appreciate you having me here. And I hope this has been insightful and fun.
Thank you so much. That was a super interesting conversation, and we love to interrupt. We love to get involved.
I love it. To be honest, I prefer that to me being a talking head and being like, and on my next slide, I'm going to discuss workings of these.
We've covered some really interesting points, so thank you. I'm super happy to have you here, and just want to echo that. It's free swag in the chat. Check it out. Can't go wrong with free swag.
And cheers, Bill. Thanks. Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And yeah, be safe, be
25 people potentially don't need to work out how to shop for clothes for another month or two.
That's my wardrobe is pretty much all of these things.
Yeah.
What am I in the mood for? Am I in the mood for, you know, ironic? No, I'm in the mood for maybe a little more sarcastic. Yep. How about a borderline offensive? Yes, you know.
Yeah. Are we going vintage or modern? Yeah, I know the feeling. What shade of black t-shirt are we going for today?
Exactly. As long as it's black, I'm okay.
That's it. Okay, cool. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, that's all we've got time for today. Thanks again for joining us, Bill. And thanks to all of you who are watching this live or checking out the recording later. I hope you've had fun and I hope you've learned something. Join us for our North American team for their next show. We'll be talking to Daniel Krivelovich and Omar Gill about their top 10 CI/CD security risks. Until next time, have a good day.
Cheers, everyone.